same time. Looks like Instagram's going. See some people on there right now, and Facebook is thinking about it. It's thinking about it right now. Looks like it is going. There, I have the live logo next to my head on the bottom. And then I see all of you streaming in. A couple hearts in there. Thank you. Wave, wave. Very, very wonderful. On Instagram. So I think that we might be set. And my cohort Alexis back at the main HQ says that we are live on both. So we can get started. Okay, so I'm going to be looking both places. So if I don't stare at you intently throughout the session, it's because I've got a couple cameras here, and then of course my notes to follow along as well. So today we're going to give a quick summary, not a quick, medium length summary on delayed onset muscle soreness. Everyone's favorite thing. They love to hate and hate to love, right? Those of you who are vigorous exercisers, either beginning a new program, just starting off your training, doing your home workouts, maybe you're back at the gym, maybe you're all gung-ho athlete, whether the weekend warrior or and then some. So it's all perspective, right? We all like to exercise, and so at some stage or another we probably do experience delayed onset muscle soreness. So let's talk about that today. So if you read about it, either through social media or maybe perhaps online when maybe you look at research articles or textbooks, sometimes you just see it abbreviated DOMS, D-O-M-S, for delayed onset muscle soreness. So I guess the short description of that would be you've got some localized, some very specific muscle soreness. It's caused by your exercise session. It's as a result of your workout. It's usually pretty specific, very acute, and usually you don't necessarily feel the effects of it until at least a day, sometimes 2.5 days after your workout. Now, of course, it doesn't happen after every workout. Usually the phrase that's associated with DOMS is unaccustomed exercise. So you've done more intensity, more duration, or a different type of workout, different type of exercises than what you're used to. And you've done it at a level that is at a level either in intensity or duration more than what you're used to. So either it's new entirely, or maybe it's at a higher level of intensity or duration than what you're typically used to. So usually those workouts, you complete your workout, you're done with your workout, you feel fine. For like a day or so, you're feeling fine, but DOMS usually hits you the second day, or maybe 2.5 days later, and it can be pretty acute, either specific to the muscle area, or even within a certain muscle area itself, you will find that you will have some acute soreness, some pretty acute stiffness. So if you're not used to it happening, it's going to come out of nowhere. Like, I felt fine yesterday, but today I'm really sore. So it can be as soon as, like someone mentioned just now, it can be as soon as 12 hours afterwards, 24 hours afterwards. But for most individuals, you're looking at about a 2-day delay before you start feeling your soreness. So it's not just from resistance training. If you're a runner and you've done a race, and you've gone faster than usual, farther than usual, you might even feel soreness like in your shins or your calves or your quads. If you run marathons or half marathons, you may remember after your first one, the need to walk down the stairs backwards, holding onto the railing because your quads were so sore. You didn't feel that soreness right after your race or your run. You felt it a day, 2 days later. So that's still delayed onset muscle soreness. So it's not just stereotypically associated with resistance training. So let's talk about that. So the concern that you might have if you're experiencing delayed onset muscle soreness is that you are going to have a reduced performance. You're going to have reduced levels of strength. You may be at increased risk of injury because of your acute level of soreness. You simply won't be able to train at the same level of intensity or duration because of your soreness. and it even can affect day to day, your non-training time. And so, it's usually trying to mitigate that or reduce the symptoms, either in how you feel or just your general feelings of mobility, your suppleness, you're able to be active. And if you are regularly training, of course, your concern then is, can I do my next workout? How much is it going to affect my next workout? So let's talk a little bit about what you can do to reduce the symptoms and deal with delayed onset muscle soreness. So one of the first things I want to mention is that delayed onset muscle soreness is just one of several side effects of that unaccustomed exercise. So you may have specific localized muscle soreness, but you also have microscopic tissue damage, muscle damage, fascial damage. You also have tissue inflammation. Your muscles, your body segments won't look swollen necessarily on the outside, but microscopically inside you have inflammation going on. And then you also have localized perception of fatigue or tiredness in those particular muscles that are having those symptoms at that time. So you've got muscle damage, you've got tissue inflammation, you've got increased fatigue, and then you've got delayed onset muscle soreness itself. So those are 4 outcomes, 4 results of what that unaccustomed workout or unaccustomed exercise may have caused you to feel. So we're just going to take out 2 of those segments. We're not really going to talk about muscle damage or tissue inflammation. We're going to make the general assumption that if you improve your symptoms, you feel better from the techniques that we'll talk about, then you've reduced your inflammation, your muscles are starting to repair themselves, and your perception of fatigue will be lessened. So let's go through a list. You probably are already quite aware of what that list would probably include, but our goal is to try to look at what we can do to reduce the severity of your symptoms of delayed onset muscle soreness, and so therefore by association improve your performance, get you back into training once again. So I have a list here that I made. I'm just going to look here on my notes. I don't want to leave anything out. You probably can think of some. If you are on Instagram, type one in that you might do yourself, a technique that you use for reducing delayed onset muscle soreness. I do know that some of our sciencey people in our group on our chat today might be looking at some of the mechanisms behind being the delayed onset muscle soreness. So I won't get into the mechanisms, but one of the questions that often does come up is the repeated bout effect, and so I will mention something about that as well. So I'll just take a minute, type in the chat what you might use as one of your go-tos for reducing your delayed onset muscle soreness. I'm just curious to see if your list might match my list that I have here. I'll just wait a few moments. So what do you typically do when you are trying to reduce your acute sensation of muscle soreness, either from a workout or a new event you might have done or something at a higher level of intensity? What do you typically do? What are some thoughts or strategies that you usually use? So I'm going to go through my list here. I purposely put them in semi-alphabetical order, so not to give you any hints, because we're going to go through the list first and then talk about which ones seem to be most effective. Nutrition and foam rolling was one of our comments. Foam rolling is one. We'll talk a little bit about that today too. Static release, easy-paced run, which is active recovery. Yep, that's one as well too. Let's see, static release, myofascial release. Yeah, so let's go through my list. So my first on my list is cold water immersion. And I'm going to try my best not to give you any hints at the outset about what some of these have shown by research to be effective and more effective or less effective. I'll talk about that second. But here's just the list, common techniques. First one, cold water immersion. Some people equate that with ice baths. You don't have to go to the extent of having ice in the water. Most of the research that is done typically uses cold water, which by definition is 59 degrees Fahrenheit, 15 degrees Celsius or colder, and usually for about 10 or 15 minutes. So that's one immersion technique, is cold water immersion. Not necessarily ice water, although that's a version of it, but most of the research studies typically just hone in about a 10 or 15 minutes in a cold water, 59 degrees Fahrenheit, 15 degrees Celsius or colder. Another one is cryotherapy. Some of you may have done this. You go into a large, one of the more common things is go into a large tank that you can stand up, and your head is actually out of the tank, and you've got cold air or cold gases that's inside there, extremely cold, minus 100 or colder, and you're in there for 2 or 4 minutes or so at a time. That's a common protocol. They don't put your head in there, so it's just the rest of you, or sometimes it's just a certain body part, for an example. Another one is cold heat or hot cold contrast baths or contrast immersion. So essentially you're going from immersing, say, your leg into cold water and then into warm, not boiling, but warm hot water. So going back and forth a certain amount of time in both for contrast baths. Another one is compression garments, wearing compression tights or wearing compression boots or sleeves over your legs or over your arms. For an example, that's another technique, is compression. Electrostim, you might have seen the handheld units. Some of them are actually attached to your phone, and you can apply the electrodes over a certain muscle area, and it makes the muscle contract and relax at a certain level of speed or complexity or stress. That's another one, electrostim. Foam rolling, we mentioned that. A couple of you posted comments about that. Foam rolling is a form of self-massage. Typically, you're looking at about 30 or 60 seconds, a couple repetitions over a certain body area, typically quadriceps, calves, hamstrings, adductors, glutes, those sorts of body areas for foam rolling. Hyperbaric therapy. This is another form of therapy, and it's using the technique of breathing pressurized oxygen, either in a room or in a tube, directly to your nose or mouth, or over both, pressurized oxygen. So hyperbaric therapy. Massage, of course, is one. And typically, we're going to define massage for our talk today as something that you would do within about a half hour, for about a half an hour up to the first 2 hours after your workout. So obviously massage can take place at other times too, but the research typically kind of defines massage as far as alleviating DOMS as what you would do in the first 2 hours after your workout, about a half hour, 20-minute massage within the first 2 hours afterwards. Another one, static stretching. Just going into a stretch position and holding your stretch for an extended period of time, 30, 60 seconds or so. And then lastly, active recovery. Basically a dynamic stretching, dynamic movements, and it's typically using the same exercises or the same movements that made you sore, but you do it at a lower level of intensity for active recovery. And that's where the repeat bout concept can come into place. A version of active recovery is doing a repeat bout. Basically, whatever made you sore, you do that same workout again, you repeat that same workout again, and there are some restorative protocols that you can do to reduce muscle soreness by doing a repeat bout workout the next day, for example. The same thing that made you sore, you just repeat that. So that's our list. So just real quickly, cold water immersion, cryotherapy, contrast baths, compression garments, electrostim, foam rolling, hyperbaric therapy, massage, static stretching, and active recovery. Now, I'm purposely not going to talk about the drug route using NSAIDs, such as ibuprofen or Aleve, or pain medications such as Tylenol or aspirin. That's not within the scope of what I can talk about, but you might read some articles or other resources that may include those strategies to reduce delayed onset muscle soreness. Okay, so those are our techniques. So what about them? What about them? Well, we'll post a couple links. I know we'll be able to post them in our Facebook page that will be associated with the session today, of a couple articles. If you've ever heard the phrase meta-analysis, those are research studies that basically just collected hundreds to thousands of other research studies and then set up certain parameters of inclusion. Like if a certain research study had these sorts of details or this sort of testing protocol or measurement protocol, then it qualifies to be included. Others may not. So they look at all the research studies that are out there on a certain topic. There's a fantastic meta-analysis that was done by Dupree in 2018 that we'll post a link later about. They analyzed almost 1,700, almost 1,700 studies on techniques to reduce the effects of delayed onset muscle soreness. And so what I'll do is I'll just give you a quick summary about what that article, that meta-analysis resulted in, and then you can think about some of these things as take-home messages for you. So let's first talk about what that meta-analysis showed that didn't work. Some of the strategies that the meta-analysis concluded that did not have effects. And before I do that, I want to remind you that we're just going to focus upon reducing the sensation, the severity of delayed onset muscle soreness, and the level of perceived fatigue that your muscle has as a result of that soreness. There are other research articles, there are other strategies, there are other conclusions about techniques to improve the overall blood profile, that your blood markers. You have certain substances that are released into your bloodstream as a result of muscle damage, for an example. And so I'm not going to get into those sorts of details. I want to look at it more from a practical point of view. Basically, what can you do to feel better? What can you do to reduce the sensation and severity of DOMS, as well as reduce the severity of perceived fatigue in those muscles? So those are the things I want you to focus upon. So these conclusions that I mentioned just deal with those two aspects only. So let's mention what the meta-analysis said that does not work. Three things that found that were not quite as effective. One is stretching by itself. Simply going into a static stretch and holding that stretch for 30 to 60 seconds or whatever, and then repeating that. Simply static stretching by itself was not found to have a significant impact on delayed onset muscle soreness or perceived fatigue. Secondly, electrostim was not found to be effective for reducing DOMS or perceived fatigue. However, the caveat there with electrostim, some of you may use that technique. The protocols are very varied, and so at this time it's kind of hard to like compartmentalize that particular technique. Some people may experience a relief in soreness from electrostim, but the protocols were too varied by definition in this meta-analysis to come up with this particular conclusion. One of the questions just came up, where can I find these articles? We're going to post a link to this meta-analysis later, and you'll be able to follow up yourself. It is a free version. It's open access articles, so you can take a look. So static stretching, electrostim, and then also hyperbaric therapy was not effective technique to reduce the feelings of DOMS or perceived fatigue. So those three we're going to set aside as not being effective. So what does work? What does work? One of the most effective across the board strategies is massage. And so massage not only has the effect to reduce the symptoms of delayed onset muscle soreness, but also to reduce the sensation of perceived fatigue. And those two outcomes in combination is a fantastic pair. If you've got both things, that you can achieve, you can experience as a result of a recovery technique, then that's fantastic. Obviously, massage is one word to mean lots of things. The meta-analysis really, by definition, just to remind you, really kind of segregated the research on massage as being something that you would do within the first 2 hours after your unaccustomed exercise session, and then for 20 to 30 minutes for that massage session. So that's how they're defining it. Obviously, massage can help at other times as well, later in the day, next day morning, pre-workout, those sorts of things, and subsequent workouts that can help out as well. But by definition, from the meta-analyses, massage was a fantastic technique. It really reduced the feelings of delayed onset muscle soreness because it increased blood flow to the area, reduced the fluid buildup in the tissues, the microscopic fluid buildup in the tissues, and it reduced the perception of fatigue. One good benefit of massage is that it was effective both for athletes and non-athletes, or better said, that wasn't well said, athletes who are training on a regular basis, individuals who are training on a regular basis, and also sedentary individuals who are not exercising at all. If they all of a sudden do something different someday and they're experiencing DOMS, massage works well for sedentary individuals as well. So it cuts across the board. So that's a great technique. And it's really the recommended technique of those in the list for those two outcomes that we were looking for. Other ones, compression garments and cold water immersion. Remember, not necessarily ice water, cold water immersion. Ice water is a separate discussion, especially for those of you who are trying to maximize muscle hypertrophy. Ice water immersion is not recommended. It really works against you for muscle hypertrophy's sake. But cold water, remember, 15 degrees Celsius or colder, 59 degrees Fahrenheit or colder. So either compression garments or cold water immersion. Those have less of an impact on DOMS and perceived fatigue than what massage does, but they still have a positive impact. They still have a positive impact. So they are strategies as well. So for me personally, I train heavily, and so I rely upon 2 out of those 3 techniques simultaneously. I use compression garments and I use massage. And those 2 strategies are compoundingly positive for me. And they do have an effect separately also, and they have an effect, again, to reduce DOMS and also perceived fatigue. Now, there are other things that can help improve the symptoms of delayed onset muscle soreness, but not necessarily perceived fatigue. So active recovery, the contrast baths, the hot-cold immersion, foam rolling, and cryotherapy. All 4 of those have an effect on improving the symptoms of delayed onset muscle soreness. They don't necessarily have as much of an impact on perceived fatigue, but they are effective, or can be an effective tool for reducing the symptoms of delayed onset muscle soreness. So I think a lot of people probably look toward either active recovery or foam rolling as techniques. Just be careful with foam rolling, because you are placing pressure again against those tissues that have experienced muscle damage. And so you can overdo foam rolling, definitely, especially if you're trying to deal with fatigue, if you're trying to deal with localized soreness. Now, if you're looking at foam rolling from a myofascial release perspective, that's not the same thing as what I'm describing as something that you would foam roll over an area of muscle tissue that's sore. Myofascial release, foam rolling is definitely effective for other reasons as well, because you are releasing fascia. So it's not just the connective tissue of muscle that's positively impacted, but also the fascia as well. So there's an improved, a bigger picture perspective that foam rolling can provide. Active recovery, I think a lot of people kind of do this without thinking, without purposely doing it. Like when you do your next workout and you're still sore, you can go through a longer warm-up. You can do a similar types of exercise movements or exercises as what caused you to be sore in the first place, and that can help get you ready for your next workout. You can kind of dissipate some of the sensations of being sore and fatigue from your DOMS and improve your ability to be able to get your next workout done at a successful level. So there's your summary. So we went through the list of the primary techniques. We described by way of the meta-analysis, the Dupree 2018 meta-analysis, that stretching, static stretching, electrostim, and hyperbaric therapy are not effective techniques to reduce DOMS or perceived fatigue. Massage, compression garments, cold water immersion are effective for DOMS as well as perceived fatigue. Active recovery, your hot-cold immersion, foam rolling, and cryotherapy work well on DOMS, less so on perceived fatigue. We had a couple questions that came through. Do the effects of massage on DOMS exhibit diminishing return as the individual gets more familiar with massage? I probably would frame that in the opposite way. If you are doing a massage and you are not necessarily, and you're doing it for the first time, it's going to take some time for you to be able to know, especially if you're doing self-massage, to know what strategies, level of pressure, how big around the area that you're experiencing DOMS. You might need to massage beyond those borders to be able to feel the positive effects of it. Massage across the board, because it does apply for individuals who are training regularly as well as sedentary individuals, does not seem to have a significant impact on diminishing returns if you do it on a regular basis. Some people find that they have other positive outcomes from massage, such as relaxation, such as stress management, such as mind-body connection, and those sorts of positive attributes can help overall your overall training plan, as well as your ability to be able to use massage as an effective tool to reduce delayed onset muscle soreness and perceived fatigue. So there you go. So hopefully you get some take-home points. We'll post the article link to the meta-analysis. I do encourage you to be informed athletes, to be informed consumer, to be informed individuals. Be sure that you are doing your research when you are looking at applying any sort of new approach to your training program, to your exercise program. And we hope, as Human Kinetics as a company tries to support you in that educational experience, and you continue to do research on your own. And thanks for joining us today. Take care and have a great one.